Hello and welcome to the weekend review on the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I am your host, Tony Anderson, and on a weekend that started so slow in the top flight, we have ended up with official complaints to leak for player welfare in a game that ended up one of the games of the season, goals directly from corners, big clubs shitting the bed in classic smash and grabs, and the best Old Firm game for as long as anyone can remember. To help talk through that, all of that, and two rubbish games at the foot of the table is the hunk from Haddington, Joel Sked. Hi, Joel.
Wow. Wow. I'm taken aback. I'm blushing. Thank you, Tony.
And the brains from Bair's Den, it's Craig Anderson. Hello, Craig.
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'd like to make it clear it's not where I'm from. I've got a bit of an issue with that. I don't want people thinking I'm imported. I'm not a local.
Okay.
Just on the two introductions there, Tony. I was when was it 20? When was the World Cup in Brazil? 2014. In 2014, I remember speaking to a girl at a bar in Chile while we went out and watched one of the Chile games, and been chatting for quite a bit. And then she turned around to me and said she had had a few drinks, but basically, I'm not into. She's like, looks are not as important to me. It's more about basically intellect. And there's like, you've been speaking to me for a long time. I'm either intellectually challenged or I am not good looking. So it was like, pick your poison.
And you ended up going home alone, of course.
Yeah, I actually did.
Well, I think we're going to have a lot to talk about here. So let's just get diving straight into the Old Firm game. We are recording this right after it finished. An absolutely pulsating affair at Ibrox. But Craig Anderson, you were saying something off air. You maybe go against the grain here and actually think this means advantage Celtic.
Yeah, I just think having watched that game, that Rangers team to me is packed with guys who don't have the minerals for it. I'm looking at me, and maybe that'll change. Maybe that will change when they get a couple back for the next game, because like someone like Sima coming on made a big difference. But I think you saw in that first half, and obviously Celtic had their own problems in the second half in terms of they kind of threw it away. They very much threw it away. They dropped the intensity. I think they thought they had the game won. They dropped the intensity. They switched off, and then they thought they had the game won again, and they did the same again. They just backed off. They stopped being as aggressive as they were in the first half. But if it comes down to that Old Firm game, I think Celtic will win it. Will win that game at Parkhead. I don't see another outcome in that one. Where the league might obviously be decided just whether the two clubs can get over the line in all the other fixtures as well. Because as you were saying before we started recording, I would be very surprised if they both win all the other games, because they've both had troubles against Killie. They have certainly Celtic have struggled against Hearts. I think Rangers have struggled. They've generally got the result, but they've struggled as well. And I think they will probably still drop points between them. But I think if it comes down to a straight shootout in that game at Parkhead, I think Celtic will win that. And I think even though they obviously will be raging at throwing the game away twice, I think Celtic will probably come out the game with more positives than Rangers do.
Let's go back to the very, very beginning where Maida sort of tackled the ball in the most sort of Dies of Maida goal you've ever seen in your life. Joe, were you surprised quite how badly Rangers reacted to that? I mean, from my standpoint, they looked so rattled and they felt like they had to get back in the game instantly, and they just started taking everything like straight away. Every free kick had to be taken within 1 second, and it just meant that they were just giving the ball away constantly.
Yeah, that it definitely panicked him. Even the goal itself, you saw that uncertainty that like Tavernier was. I think he was forgot that he was playing forgot that he was playing up against Maeda, and he was a wee bit kind of not slow, because he assumed he got complacent and assumed Butland was going to come to it, and then was like, oh shit, Maeda's right up my arse. I better not pass it back to Butland because it got really close, and then. Again, it was just wasn't a great attempt to get it away, and that's kind of just summed up Rangers' first half performance in that it wasn't street smart. They didn't really think about a lot of the things they were doing. It goes back to Craig talking about the minerals, and that it was a full house, expectant crowd. They were up for it, and then the atmosphere changed completely, and we look back at the title that Rangers won. There was no fans in those stadiums because I think they've still to prove that side of things. They came back brilliantly, but they were in a terrible position to begin with because of that. And I just go back to, you just look at the starting 11. It's 2024 and they're starting Scott Wright in an Old Firm clash.
Well, that whole front three though, the whole front three is not shaking fear in anyone.
No. And that's like, I think you look at the Rangers team that started it, and you use the term soft, and that's what I think they were in terms of their mentality and just the physicality of it. You look at Fabio Silva, for example, just chucking himself about what was. Sometimes, a lot of times, I find it funny, but I was just like, even I was just like, give it a rest, mate. Just give it a rest.
You know, I think it's always, it's bad when you're watching a game as a neutral and you find yourself getting like really annoyed at a player. It's like they like, it's not like, you're not really got a skin in the game in terms of who you actually care about, but you're just like, for fuck's sake, Fabio, like you can't, because Johnstone was bullying him, and like the one that Johnstone got booked for, like it was a yellow card, but Silva made it look like he'd absolutely, poleaxed him, and it was just a little bit. And then right after it, Johnstone obviously saw that and like snapped into the next one. And Silva's performance was just like, he might have the ability. I mean, he's not showed a lot of it actually since he came, like in any way, but he does not seem to have the stomach for it. He didn't want any part of that game, and I thought it was summed up by that penalty, which to me is an awful decision, because John Beaton sees it live. He sees it for exactly what it was, which was a player didn't back himself, didn't fancy it, thought, I'm just going to see if I can sneak a penalty here. Is there contact between?
I'm just saying, I think it was telling that his teammates' reaction. Like, they weren't expecting a penalty. They didn't think it was a penalty, and they were kind of like pushing away. It's like, right, rein yourself in, sir. Yeah,
and the fact it was everyone on co-coms. The whole thing was like, yeah, that's a yellow card. Clearly, is there contact? Yeah, there is, but it's he's on the way down. He's already kind of done that body shape. There was a very similar one in England last week. It was in Newcastle and Leicester, wasn't it? There was a very similar one. I mean, it was. Sorry, I don't mean it wasn't the same type of incident, but it's a player just spotting a bit of contact and creating it for himself. And I think we're in a bad place if people want to give penalties for that. And
was that the West Ham, Newcastle West Ham?
It was. Sorry, yeah. We want to be getting ourselves into we need to be watching about forwards actually having to be fouled rather than just construct a foul, if you know what I mean.
It's like one of those things with Silva. It was like the other way around. You would think that because Johnstone makes a stupid decision and hangs a daft leg, which is actually quite high, that I could see why a ref would be conned on the pitch by that and give the penalty, and then VAR would get involved and say, by the way, he was way over, there's barely any contact. Because I do think Johnstone was stupid. I thought it was a really lazy and pointless thing to do, because, as you say, Silva was going down anyway. Johnstone, as the rest of the game would be, he would have been able to just run back and knock him out of the way anyway and just take the ball, as he had done through the rest of the game. But with Silva, the play acting and the diving, that was just a guy desperate to make some sort of impact. He couldn't make the impact with the ball. He was getting battered around the pitch, as he has done in the games against other Scottish Premiership opponents. He's sort of quite average, but you can see why Rangers would like him. He's good in tight areas. He can take the ball. He can get a goal in these games, and he can maybe slide a few passes, and he can be used in the squad rotation. But when these games turn up, like when he played Benfica at Ibrox, and today when they're playing Celtic, he's not even average. He's clearly out of his depth. But he wasn't the only one in the first half for Rangers. I mean, Connor Goldson, I thought had an awful game. I saw Fowler on a chat and I was laughing about it as well. When he was asking Scott Wright to come short, they just shelled it 20 yards over his head. It was just like, and that just epitomised everything about Rangers. Like I said earlier, they were just they got so rattled by that goal. It's just like every single game plan that they must have had to get it just went out the door. And I was really quite surprised at only taking like sort of like a really lucky goal from Celtic's point of view. I know you can Do you know what I mean? But you think that wouldn't have such a big effect on a team that has shown, I know guys, you would be saying differently, but I thought they've shown pretty decent mentality since Clement's come in, and they've dug out points in lots of games, and it's been by force of will rather than arguably by ability. So I was quite shocked that they were impacted quite that much by that goal.
I think it's easier to dig out points against poorer quality teams, though. Like, I mean, your generally your higher ability will just get you through in situations, and they didn't have that today. They didn't have more ability than Celtic on the park. I think it's pretty. Neither team is exactly the best they've ever been, I would say, in terms of the quality they've got there. But I mean, that first half, it was all about Celtic's aggression, and that's what got them 2-0 up, and they were snapping into everything. You had that wee spell where they got 3 yellow cards in 5 minutes because they were just fighting in a way that Rangers weren't.
Yeah, because it wasn't really about Celtic's quality in the first half. They were just really, as you said, aggressive with the pressing and being able to take advantage and not being scared, and Rangers just looking really, really timid. And that's will be the issue for both of them, is that it doesn't tell you so much about how good either team is. I think it tells you that Celtic probably are more comfortable in the environment and feel like they have more experience and are able to roll with the punches better. But neither of them showed really what high quality they got. They were both just able to take advantage of the other team's sort of poor situations in each of the game, or do you think I'm being a bit unfair?
I just think you look at it, and yeah, I think there's a big thing with I think you saw two sides to Rangers in that they are trying to think of another word than mentality, but just the game state. They're rattled, and it took them a long time to settle. That was only really until they brought on better players, and then but also kind of Celtic allowed them to get back into. Obviously, the momentum of the penalty as well was massive. But you look at the squad of the two teams, and that Rangers had started with Wright, Lawrence, Silva. Not guys I'm overly enamoured by. And then Celtic started really strong. But then you saw what happened when they brought on Yang and Ida. And even also Callum McGregor, think, oh, perfect. Here's a guy to bring on. You settle it down. And this is the guy who will lead Celtic and get them over the line. And then he ends up making a complete arse of himself with it. Not only just passing it to Rangers for the second equalising, the first equalising goal, and then it obviously deflected and off him. So I just saw two teams that are vulnerable and fragile in certain situations, and I think that's always a case. Sorry, that always has to happen when you get a game like that when it's 3-3. Because if there were two really competent teams, I think you would have seen a much more nervy, tense game like you sometimes see in the EPL.
So you're thinking like the idea is that it might have really boiled down to a bit who they can get on the pitch. Both squads aren't as deep as they would want to be, and you, as you say, you see the examples of that in this game alone. That once when certain players are having to be used, the other team's able to take full advantage. So yeah, like maybe hugely the injuries will and who they can get on the pitch and who they can get in form will have a big impact on the rest of the season. Tom Lawrence. You picked him out there. Thought he was absolutely hopeless. I was dumbstruck in the first half when Kenny Miller was pulling out Diomande, who I thought was the only player for Rangers who looked like he wanted the ball, who looked comfortable. He was snapping at tackles. He was trying to give impetus. Don't get me wrong. He gave the ball a few times away in turnovers due to the frantic nature of the game, but he looked like he was on it and was ready to drag Rangers through. Whereas Lawrence is giving the ball every time he gets it, going into hiding, and then you've got
just safe. He's just safe.
Well, that's what I think. I think there's a lot of pundits in this country that they will immediately pick up, because someone like Diamande is a brave player, shows for the ball all the time, tries things, tries to force issues, sometimes tries to make things happen. That player, because he's visibly making a mistake, they'll pick on that more than the player who's doing nothing of note whatsoever in the game, which is what I think you could even see it with Wright and Silva. Wright isn't at that level, but when he gets the ball, he's trying to do something. He's taking a risk. He's trying. I don't think he could have many complaints about going off at half time, but he contributed a lot more to Rangers than Silva did in that period. But I think there's also this aspect of it's harder to take off your marquee signing, but which I mean, and they improved when they did finally get to do that. I do think as well, Jack Butland will be very relieved and will have a lot to thank Rabbi Matondo for, because that is terrible goalkeeping from him after
nobody said a word.
After a brilliant performance again, as you've expected from him. Like, I mean, okay, he gets embarrassed by the Panenka, but that's not. I just mean, I mean embarrassed. I don't mean it's not saying he should be saving it or anything, but it's obviously a bit of a as he's opposite number down the other end knows, it's a bit of a. You know, it does have that impact on you, but he had a really good game. But that is an awful piece of goalkeeping from Butland in front of obviously his international manager.
Gareth Southgate just standing up and walking out right there. I came up. Everyone told me to come up. I've seen enough. Back down to get Sam Johnson in the
straight away. As soon as the ball hit the net, I was like, "Well, Jack, you are not going to Germany. Forget it."
But yeah, it would have been the talking point. It would have been the big talking point of the week. That would have come through. Is that he does well, and it's a nice goal. It's a very nice goal from Celtic's point of view. But Matondo, that's a fantastic goal from Matondo. Just
on Butland, it's an awkward one because it's hit. See, if it was hit closer, I think he goes with his feet and just reacts by. If it was a closer range shot, because of the position of it, he reacts with his feet and basically just saves it, and it clears away. Whereas with it being long, a shot from edge of the box, outside of the box, he tries to kind of smother it, drop down and smother it, but he's obviously not done that.
I thought it was funny what he does as well, just with Callum McGregor coming on, nearly costing them the game and quite possibly the league, blah, 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 blah. And then it's some big huddy for Norwich that's digging out Callum McGregor from there. But to be fair to Ida, I think he's improved massively since the first few weeks where he was there. And he is the kind of second option that Celtic would always want to have. Similar like what Giakoumakis was like when Celtic were really going full throttle when they had him and Kyogo, and that worked really well. And the same there, it's given them a completely different option. I thought Rodgers called that substitution at the right time to suddenly get someone bigger to help them get out, because Kyogo, I love Kyogo, I think a great player, but in that situation he becomes like an empty shirt. There's not a lot you can use him for when you're under that much of the cosh, really.
I thought that Celtic would have had the game wrapped up if it wasn't for some poor forward play decision making by Kyogo in the first half. There was a few situations where they broke and they got goal side of Rangers, and he just looked so unsure of himself. He just like, you get it, just go at Goldson. You've got him, just take him on, have a shot. Or there was other times where take a touch, see who's coming. There was one where it was Hatate and Maeda that were kind of on his left, and you just like take a touch and see it. You've got a 3. I think it was 3-on-2. So there's just a couple of times where you just thought he wanted more from Kyogo, and then Maeda. The first goal was a complete. Exactly the type of Maeda goal, a goal that Maeda you expect him to score, and then when he gets an even better chance where he's cutting in on his right, and it's just a kind of tame shot that it was a good save by Butland, but it's a save you expect to make. It's real. I think that basically showed Kyogo struggles and Maeda in a nutshell.
And then, as you were talking about, Craig, Rabbi Matondo off the bench. That's 2 games in a row he scored the exact same goal. He scored a few goals not too dissimilar from that other points, but for a maligned player still, even though he's been a lot better, for him to come up that much and at a moment like that, you wouldn't have guessed that a year ago.
No, I think there's enough about him to be like he's worth a squad place at a club like Rangers, because he can come on. It's not usually things like that. I mean, he has done it there, but that's not usually what you'd associate. But just even having the pace to get them out, get them up the park, and just be able to run with the ball. And again, he's a guy that he may not always get everything right, but you always know he's there, because he comes, he'll get the ball, he'll run with the ball, he'll stretch things and all the rest of it. And it's an incredible goal. Like, I think you have to take a bit of context in a goal. See, if you score a goal like that when you're 3-0 up and there's no risk associated with taking that shot, it's still a nice goal. But to do it in that situation where basically if he does what you would expect a player to do in that position, which is like sky it out of the park with like already into stoppage time in a big game, he would be getting slaughtered for doing it. But so the risk associated with it being higher is what makes it to me a more impressive goal. The fact that he's made that decision. He's taken that chance despite the consequence of missing. And it's a fantastic goal. And if they do go on and win the league, that will be the one that will be seen probably and thought back of it. A bit like when Vennegoor Hesselink scored the winner when it's at a 3-2 game 2008, I want to say. It's a one that people go back and remember. It's a late goal in a big head-to-head game. If they win the league, that will be the one that I think will be remembered for a long time.
And like Joel, you're saying there about Yang coming on, he's just not with it. He allows them to come inside at such a crucial period. When he scored that exact goal last week, that makes it more and more criminal. They'll definitely have noticed that. They'll definitely have looked at it. And again, that's the idea, is that the drop-off now between the benches is just so high.
I just don't think Yang's got it. I was just checking. Yeah, James Forrest is on the bench now. James Forrest is done as a starting player for Celtic. To me, that's a much better game for him because he's got the defensive nous as well, and he'll track back and he'll do everything, and he's not going to offer, because I think he's still a better player than Yang. I think Yang has got a bit of directness, and maybe they see him as a bit of a like for like for Kuhn more so, but he's just not very good, and yet he's also, you're losing that ability to track, and okay, Sterling wasn't really a factor from an attacking point of view for Rangers, kind of being on his wrong side and stuff like that, but just in terms of being able to double up on whoever they bring on in that left hand side, I felt Forrest would have been the better sub.
I just think it just goes back to, I just look at the two squads and the fact that there's a noticeable drop off when you make changes at Celtic and Rangers at the moment in terms of their best 12, 13 players, and there's a lot of players that you don't trust in the big moments, and then there's obviously others where you kind of not over reliant on, but you're having to rely on them kind of pulling you out. So yeah, two vulnerable teams a game, it helps.
Makes it better, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes it much better because they're fallible. So you get games like this. And then you get situations where, like Craig said, you're not expecting Celtic and Rangers to go on a tear now and win every single game between now and the end of the season. Obviously, they can't because they're playing each other, but in the other games when they're up against St Mirren, Hearts, Kilmarnock, whichever other Diddy makes up the top six, in that they don't have the trust factor you're going to win 6-7 games in a row. Right.
Let's talk about a game that was sort of like a week in the making. There was so much build-up towards this game. Will it be on? Do we want it on? Do we want Dundee to win? Do we want Motherwell to win? Do Motherwell want to play? Yes, they do. They're going to be winning, but they're still going to make complaints. An absolutely bonkers week lead up to this football match. And thankfully, I think for everyone, thankfully, it was a great game of football. And maybe we could just calm down about Parks, maybe a little bit.
Tony, it was better. So I watched the full game, and I'm watching it. Okay, it's different to watching it on Wisecout than it is being at the game and seeing it up close. But I'm just looking at it thinking, pitch isn't that bad.
The ball's moving. People are making interchanging passes. Yeah. There was some really good football in it.
But this is it. It's like, I think people have somehow come to this point of like the pitch has to be grass and fully perfectly green all over, or otherwise we're not playing a game. That is a bad pitch, but you can still play games on a bad pitch. It's not an unsafe pitch. It didn't look, I mean, maybe it feels different on the ground, but I really feared for Motherwell when I heard that coming out from them before the game, because I'm like, it's just a bit,
they don't want to play.
It felt like they were resigning themselves, and it kind of felt like that for a chunk of the game, where it was like until they maybe made the changes, it felt like.
But you're spot on, Craig, though, because Kettlewell basically insinuated that he picked a team specifically for this game, which meant Lennon Miller didn't play. And then when Lennon Miller came off the bench, being Motherwell's probably already, arguably, one of their, certainly in their top three players, the game changes on that with him and Moses coming on. And so, I mean, it makes a bit, it's just all so silly.
Thing is, though, I don't understand is that Lennon Miller's, you're looking at the Motherwell squad. Lennon Miller's the player you want to be on you want to have on the ball, and just because the pitch isn't great, he's still the player you want to have on the ball. It's like, oh no, I think Andy Halliday would be better on a shit pitch.
Because the pitch is shitter, we want a shitter player to be kicking it.
I don't understand that logic. Andy Halliday's still going to be Andy Halliday on that pitch. Lennon Miller's still going to be Lennon Miller. on that pitch. Guys have played on worse. Without sounding like your dad, it's Scotland. Like, pitches are going to be shit. They're going to be wet. They're going to be just the whole pitch nonsense this season has been an absolute embarrassing, funny, pathetic, but amusing nonetheless.
Funny for us on the lead up, but they're just like, you can't, basically Kettlewell's saying like, oh, the idea is he's trying to protect young Scottish players from this horrible pitch that has it. Then they were trying to put this narrative about, oh, we've spent money on a pitch and they've been able to bring in more players, and that's cheating. It's just, it's so fun for social media though, because everyone just starts throwing more gas on the fire constantly, trying to come up with something else that gets everyone riled up, and it's just unbelievable. And then as I said, then if we can move on to that now, we get what was an absolutely brilliant game of football, topsy-turvy, which, if I'm being honest, Joe, you watched it, Motherwell could have ended up winning that quite comfortably after being 2-0 down.
So I think we've all received Gary Cocker's notes on the game, and he talked about the turning point being Lennon Miller and Moses coming on. There was no turning point. Motherwell were the better team. Throughout, even before getting their first goal back into it, they were by far the better team over the piece. Dundee started well, and they were causing a lot of problems with Lyle Cameron and Scott Tiffany breaking in to kind of breaking through, running with the ball, dropping into spaces behind the Motherwell midfield. But that lasted for maybe 20, 30 minutes. This Motherwell deserved to win this, and they probably deserved to win this by much more. They were the more complete team. They were a better organised team. They took care of the ball so much better as well, and it was the least they deserved.
So, I mean, Craig, do we now look at this, and we're going to come on to talk about Hibs after this, but do you not get the feeling now that because of the clubs involved, that Motherwell are now feel like almost favourites for the top six?
Yeah, it's possible to say that, because Motherwell have, in terms of performance-wise, have really turned a wee bit of a corner the last wee while, and they've still lost some games, but especially when I saw the fixture list that they're actually playing Hibs next week at Fir Park, I definitely would put Motherwell's favourites for that game now, the way both teams are going, and it then basically comes down to, can Dundee get a point out of either Rangers or Aberdeen? I mean, of course they can, but all three teams have at points this season like been prone to just shit in the bed, falling apart, but Motherwell seem to have kind of come through that. But I think it's over 20 points Dundee have chucked away from winning possessions this season. It's the second time this season they've lost a game for 2-0 up, and all three games against Killie they've been leading going into the last 10 minutes and not won any of them, and they've lost late goals. They lost a late equaliser to Motherwell earlier in the season. They've just been chucking points left, right and centre, and basically, to me, unless Dundee are like 3-0 up with 5 minutes to go in one of these games, I don't think they'll be back in it. Do you know what I mean? I feel like they will. I would say out of the three teams, they've probably deserved the top six spot in terms of what they've shown across the season. But Motherwell have got the nous a wee bit more than other teams. Have probably been there and done it a lot more than even Hibs have in recent years. How often have Hibs been in a direct battle for anything over the last few years? They obviously almost pulled them. I was going to say, but they really weren't, and they just pulled themselves back into it by Hearts like falling apart. Like Hibs weren't, and I wouldn't have said Hibs were really in consideration for that.
No, was it not the last day of the top six that Hibs had to get into it though? Did they?
Yeah. Oh, maybe you're right. Actually,
like
you might be right.
Like Hibs, it was a head-to-head for Hibs to get in the top six last season, and they made it. Maybe even against Motherwell.
I was trying to think, because I was trying to remember. I was thinking more of the battle for fourth as it became. Like Hibs were nowhere in that battle, and then all of a sudden, if they beat Hearts in the last game, they would have got it. But I mean, and obviously Dundee won a league on the. I'm not saying these teams haven't done things before, but I just feel like Motherwell were a team who
have been doing this year in, year out for a decade. Yeah.
Ricky Lamy scoring the winner against Livingston in stoppage time the last time they finished top six. Motherwell have the momentum behind them. they might have just given themselves a wee bit too much to do, in the sense that they're not reliant on themselves. They can go out and beat Hibs and they'll know they'll be ahead of Hibs, but you're still relying on this Aberdeen team.
The frustrating thing from a Dundee point of view about talking about that is with Tony Dockett, they've got a deep squad. So in terms of losing all these, it'll be really frustrating because they've got a lot of bodies they can use. They've got different types of players that can slot in. Because I know Gary was talking about like they should have had Boateng on earlier for that. They should have brought on a different striker and taken Tiffany on. But that'll be frustrating because they do have the options there to change the game up depending on what's happening on the pitch.
I think the challenge they'll have as well is it's all optics, right? Because you've talked about that. Yeah, they've built a good squad. They've been quite impressive, like relative to what you'd expect. This is Dundee, who every the last two times they've come up have been stinking and have gone straight back down. And they've finally got a good team together. A team that probably, as I said, I think should have it. I mean, they literally should have had it wrapped up yesterday. Like that, they were 2-0 up. Hibs were probably going to lose. That would have been it. If they go and finish 7th, if you'd offered any of those Dundee fans 7th at the start of the season, they're biting your hand off for it. It's a good season for Dundee coming back up. They certainly, I mean, you think of where Killie were the same time last year, where it was like last day of the season to stay up. But the optics of it is now going to be a tinge with disappointment, and that can maybe
bleed into next season.
That's what I wonder. Like with Killie, the season last season was stinking, but we pulled it out in the last couple of games, got the results, and all of a sudden went in on a bit more of a high. Whereas like there is a little bit of that, and whether that kind of bleeds over or not, I don't know. But this game did kind of sum up their season in the sense that they've not always been impressive, but they've been finding ways, and they've got themselves 2-0 up, and you think, right, good job, like that's a really big result, and then it's not.
Sorry, on you go.
I was just saying the last time I checked, they've got they had the youngest squad in the league, and you just look at some of the moments that they've had where they're in control and then they're not, and then it's kind of going back to what we're talking about, the Old Firm game where Rangers conceded the goal, and then it's how you react. Dundee have not been very good at reacting, and we've seen it on Saturday with the ultimate one was the penalty. And then there was that talk about encroachment. It looked like it might have been taken back. And then it's Gent scored in the 79th minute. Bair scored in the 81st. But in terms of actual game time, there must have been about 25 seconds between the goals. And then it was just such a soft, cheap goal to give up to Bair, having just conceded. And then you just allow him easily to run through on goal. Donnelly, don't know what he was doing. His first thought was, I'm going to try and battle and put my hands on Bair rather than just go, you know what, I'll just turn around and just clear the ball, run back and clear. And then don't get me started on McCracken.
Let's, just before we move on, Joe, let's talk about Motherwell, the two sides of the park. One guy whose reputation is sort of disintegrating, and another whose reputation is going through the roof. From admittedly, a very low start. We've got Liam Kelly and Theo Bair, who from what I saw in the highlights, was just treating the Dundee centre-halves like carrier bags.
So we'll start with Kelly first. How many times have you seen the same face as he's lying on the ground and looking to the ref with the almost puppy dog's eyes? Is like, please help get me out of this situation because I've just made another mistake from a cross. And that's, I think it was maybe on where, I don't know if I've not watched the show from Friday, A View from Terrace, but Kelly was certainly talked about.
He was.
And all you need to do is, I think he's been a good enough goalkeeper, but he has got one massive weakness in that just put a cross on top of him and he struggles. And he looked to the refs like, oh, there's a Dundee player in front of me. Yes, a Dundee player is allowed to stand there. He's not doing anything. He's literally standing his ground. All you need to do is look at the ball and just punch it away. And he can't do that. So yes, very, very bad. As for Bair, it was very good. Even just his link-up play was very good. His ability to run...
look lovely together.
Yeah, absolutely. I was watching. I was obviously keeping a keen eye on Spittle because he's joining Hearts next season and thinking, right, when can we get Bair in? Because Bair is...
you're like me, Joe. You just get completely romanticised about any other player in this league and just think how good they'll be for... They're all nearly always shit when they come in.
I know.
The thing I get with Bair is, like, as soon as you saw him with his physicals and all the physical aspects of his game, you understand why a team would sign him, and you understand why. And then you watched him playing for Dundee, it's St Johnstone, sorry, and he was rotten because the ball bounced off him. It was like a trampoline first touch. The ball was like flying away. He couldn't get himself into the game. And Willery just needed that adjustment period. He's 24 now. And I really see the parallels with Connor Salmon, where he was the first 2 seasons at Killie, had the physicals. You could see why, because I think we paid a small fee for like 20 grand or something for Connor Salmon from Irish football. And you could see why Jim Jeffries would think he was a player. But it took something to click for him almost, and obviously he had the support of good other players around him, and he went and he had a fantastic career. All right, yeah, I mean, he might have latterly been a bit of a joke figure again, but he went on and had a really good player playing in the Premier League in England. And I do see Bair, if he even continues this end of the season, there will be teams down in that Championship looking at him and going, oh, we want a bit of this, because he's got enough of the kind of chaos about him as well that he really looks like a Championship striker.
So you believe that this isn't a flash in the pan, that the Bear's going to go on and have a good career, and I mean that relatively speaking.
I can see it now. But I mean, he's back in the Canada squad, and I mean, Canada not mugs. They're not brilliant, but they're not mugs. Mm-hmm. They're going to be hosting the next World Cup. There's a very strong chance he's
Bair
now
and
playing
Jonathan David up front. Here we go.
And you've got a guy who's only got better since he joined Motherwell, but came to Scottish football essentially because you saw the player he was in that first period. But you're also looking at, I was at the third game of the season, Killie played Motherwell at Fir Park, and they had Bair and the big dumpling American guy, Joe Efford, up front together. And yeah, Efford they were both rotten. They were both terrible in that game. But Efford was doing nothing. Efford was like, it looked like he'd never seen the sport before, whereas Bair was making really good runs, was making a nuisance of himself, but either wasn't getting the ball, or when he got the ball was wasting it. But like, at least you've got something about him, because I said this to Graham, I'm like, at least he's involving himself properly.
That's the thing. The thing about Bair is that I think he could have an off day, and he's seen it Saturday there. He missed, I think he missed actually 3 chances. One was ruled offside, and then he missed 2 other pretty good chances. But even on an off day, you still think he's going to be a handful, and he's still going to ask questions of the opposition defence. And you saw it with his goal, and I mentioned about Donnelly. Donnelly's first instinct is, right, I better just get my hands on him and try and stop him, rather than actually just dealing with the situation himself. And I do think he's just very awkward to play against, because he can drop deep. Yeah, I don't think he's going to ever be a brilliant link striker, but he can do it. He can drop deep. He's strong, and then his ability to run in behind is massive as well. Run the flanks, so he ticks a hell of a lot of boxes. And if Hearts ever did sign him, I just hope that Naismith doesn't play him right wing against a Maltese side, as he did, as Nielsen did, Connor Salmon. You've really put me off there mentioning Salmon.
Connor Salmon was man of the match against that Maltese team. I was at that game.
I know, and got laughed down by the crowd.
And the Hearts crowd obviously are the most educated of them all, Craig Anderson. But something that will cheer up the Hearts crowd, me talking about our first feature of the podcast, which is In the Mud, and it's going to be participated by Mr. Nicholas Montgomery, who presided over a home defeat to St Johnstone. To be fair, he's not the first one to preside over that at Easter Road, but at the end of the day, it now looks like Hibs had the perfect situation. Everything went their way. It took a while, but everything went their way yesterday, and it's an absolutely huge chance miss, not just for the top 6, but you'd be looking at Hibs being in the driving seat for Europe now, going into next week after this. And I'm going to go through all the reasons that I feel it was Nick Montgomery has to take a huge chunk of the blame.
Tony, before we get into why Nick Montgomery was really, really bad, do you think his middle name's Anthony. Do you think if he just changed his name to Tony Montgomery, that he would get a bit more respect rather than just Nick?
Tony Monts. No, yeah, probably. Nick's. I mean, I'm trying to think how many people I know called Nick for a side, but it's not a big name. Who we get? Nick Clegg. No, you're not going to be scared of Nick Clegg. You're not going to listen to Nick Clegg.
Nick's but the thing is, Nick suits him. So I think he just needs a whole personality makeover. Like Tony Montgomery, he comes in and he's wearing bling. He's maybe got a backwards baseball cap.
Easter Road. That's the first thing that the new owners, the what's his name, has to do from the US is to bring in Gok Wan and just totally...
Yeah, but behind the scenes at Easter Road, and it's got Tony Montgomery going into, I don't know, Zara at the film him going in, just looking like a miserable sod in his Nick and his Hibs tracksuit, and then coming out with just wearing looking normal.
A short leather jacket, skinny jeans with a roll up.
No, not skinny jeans, really baggy jeans. They seem to be in fashion. Really baggy jeans, flares.
Okay. Well, but right now I'm up for anything to try and change Nick Montgomery. Who, if anyone listens to this podcast, will know that I've tried my best not to be too overcritical, but he's the most fucking boring cunt alive. and then on top of that, all these decisions that he's making are having such a massive poor impact on the team.
What went wrong against St Johnstone? Where did it start?
Let's kick off with just the lineup. So anyone who's been paying even the slightest bit of attention will know that Youan and Melida have struck up a bond off the park and certainly on the park. Youan's going through a real purple patch, very similar to last season when it hit the business end. Youan really came into his own, and he's been creating pretty much every goal for Hibs over the last few weeks, and he's created three of Melida's goals in recent weeks. So you're thinking, right, that's an absolute given. We've got that going. Even if things are going wrong, things aren't going well, you've got, football's all about building relationships on the park. That's exactly what you want to do. And once you've got one, you especially when you're in the issues Hibs are having and you're trying to salvage something from a season, the last thing you should do is break that up. And I know Martin Boyle's a highly paid player, but it was a pretty serious injury he got. He was out for a while. I don't see the rush in bringing him back in. And let's be honest, his numbers look okay, Boyle, but he's not had a great season. He's not the same player as he was even a year ago. So that just made completely no sense whatsoever. Then we go into the making the changes. So Will Fish, who, don't get it, he had a poor game, so I'm willing to buy that he wasn't feeling too well, even though Fish is one of those players that you go between believing they're good and believing they're shit, all within in the same game. But then he decided to bring Mariah Welsh on, which I think was a great decision, and Mariah Welsh was really good in the second half. But that moved Triantis back at defence, who we have all seen what's happened over the season, over the first few games, what happens when Triantis goes into defence. And that didn't just have an effect on Triantis, it clearly had an effect on Rocky Bashiri, who since he's come back to the African Nations Cup has been superb. And the minute that Triantis has went in beside him, he's completely collapsed. And the goal that they conceded was absolutely, well, it was awful. So I just don't understand these decisions that he makes. And if you look over, even if you go back in the past, we don't need to go into all the 4-4-2 stuff. We don't need to go into that. But it seems to me like the team has been getting better despite Montgomery. It hasn't been the way, the style that we were playing, the passive football, the back. We still build for the back, but it's nowhere near the same way as it was. Any of you guys, because Craig, I know you laughed at Hibs a lot when it first started, but you'll watch Hibs now and it's nowhere near to the level it was. That's clearly been like calmed down. So that's him went against his principles right away there. To
me, that stuff is not his principles. To me, that stuff is him trying to make a statement when he joins. All these stupid, like, I don't mind passing out for the bag. I think it's quite a good game. I get annoyed at people who get like properly worked up about it, but it was being done in such a silly way with players that weren't able to do it. And I was like, why have you got David Marshall and Will Fish like knocking 1-2s for each other from goal kicks against like a team like Killie who are just going to press you? It felt like it was like, that's not his. To me, that's not his principle. To me, that's him going, look, I'm really different for the last guy. Here's me doing something to show you that. And yeah, they're not doing as much nonsense now, but yeah, they don't have character. Hibs. They don't have it's like,
which is something that you would want your manager to implement. And the fact that he's been there for quite some time, and I'll come on to sort of the self-preservation mode.
Just on that, and it's Nick Montgomery was very much touting. He wanted to get out of the A-League, and he was very much touting himself around clubs in Scotland, looking for. I think he saw it as a natural step for him. And you think during that time he must be thinking, right, to get myself into Scotland and really to get a good job and then to hit the ground running, maybe watch Scottish football, see what it's like, and maybe look at the clubs that you think, I might be struggling and I might be able to get in there. Have some common sense about what it takes to succeed, even just to begin with, because that's stuff like that where like passing out from the back and being that takes time. That takes time to coach. That takes you don't have time. You can't just bring in your own players at that point either. Yeah, you just don't have that choice. You can't just come in there and just go, right, we're going to right. Let's David Marshall. Let's play 1-2s at St Mirren or Killie, who make it really difficult for you. You need to just do especially a team who are struggling, just come in, do the basics right, get people on your side, get all right, he knows what he's doing, and then build into that, rather than just go, right, we're going to do this from the start and we'll just do it until we actually do it, or until they have to sack off.
But I do think it comes, there's an arrogance to that, and it's very much not just him. There are a lot of managers from outside Scottish football who come into Scottish football and think that they can make their way that they've done wherever they've been before, whether that's at a much higher level or a lower level in Montgomery's case, and they think they can transfer what they've done directly. And it's I don't want this as a comment on the relative quality. Yeah, but it's not the relative qualities of the league. It's that Scottish football does very much have a unique style of play. I think the football that we watch is very different, and it's not a surprise to me that you look at the clubs who have thrived this season, or the managers who have thrived, Derek McInnes, Stephen Robinson, Stephen Naismith, guys who have been heavily involved in Scottish football for a long time and understand that and understand how to win games at this level. And yeah, there are guys, you have to couple that with actually coaching ability, which all three clearly seem to have, but it's something that I think Van Bronckhorst really struggled with when he came in at Rangers, and I think you can see the difference with Kilmarnock at Rangers. You could see, because he was talking about it, he put a lot of research into understanding football here, and yeah, I think I agree with you, Montgomery's not done that, but I would ask you the question, Tony. Clearly Hibs have basically been a manager a year for 5 years at this point. You've tried, Ross wasn't there that long, but since him, you've tried a variety of different guys and it's not worked. At what point do you think, and I've got my own view on this, but do you think you should just eventually just stick with one, even if it's not going that well, and just hope that they can develop something, or do you think they should just keep going until they get it, quote unquote, right?
Well, certainly not be sticking with Montgomery if you want me, because I just don't like watching it. I've said this before on the podcast about Montgomery, is if it's not working on the pitch because of his style, the way he talks in the media, you've absolutely nothing else to go on. You've only got the on-pitch personality as the thing that you've got to go on, because everything else, you feel like he's either holding stuff back, he doesn't like the camera, he doesn't want to say anything like that, which is absolutely fine. But that means you've got absolutely nothing else to go on. But I would keep going, Craig, till we get someone. We might have to get to, but everyone who listens would know what my feelings are. It's going to get Alex Neil. I feel he's the perfect manager. I think it's absolutely perfect in what it would be able to do. But to go back to Montgomery,
just on that, Tony, is that you look at, I think there is a time, there'll come a time and place where you, right, okay, you just go, right, you stick by that guy. Hearts done it, thankfully, but the last three, Hibs should have done it with Ross. That's what they should have done it with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was going to say.
The last three managers, Maloney, not Ben, good decision. Lee Johnson, Ben, good decision. Nick Montgomery, obviously we'll see, but it's not trending in the right direction for Hibs.
And you're talking about this arrogant side, Craig, which I like. I think a big problem that took him so long to be willing to make the changes, and it was after that St Mirren game where it sounds like there was a big set to at the club after it on the Monday. But the problem is, for someone like Nick Montgomery, he won a league. And that's a good thing normally, but he's coming in with thinking things that he's seen work outright to the point of hitting success so high. So I think that took him so long to be willing to make the changes, because he was he would think, no, I'm right, I know it, I've witnessed it, I've seen it, I've done it.
Do you think he did that thing where he did at Central Coast Mariners, where he got a picture of the squad and taped their picture on a wall? Do you think that's still up there at the training centre? Just laying empty, just Will Fish's face and no one else's.
We're going to go to, and then the other thing is the fucking. This is the bleeds into the arrogant side as well. This insistence of trying to make Jair Tavares a thing. It's nobody else sees it. Nobody else wants it. He did have a few good games, and this is where it goes into self-preservation. I feel like because he got a little bit of change out of Tavares, he really wants to keep on barring that, because that's something that he can show that I achieved. But Tavares is not good enough. He's not built for the game whatsoever. And yesterday, taking off Joe Neal, who was poor, don't get me wrong, but to bring on Jair Tavares, you're like, no way is that going to get us back into the game. Stop doing it. Stop bringing him on. Please.
And then you feed into another angle for the arrogance is the January transfer window, and that it didn't help when they signed the boy from Bournemouth and they had to go back. Was it Bevan? Was he a right back or was he a centre back?
He could play right back or centre half. Mainly centre half.
But yeah, and you still have got the same kind of issues at centre back, that if Fish is going to be out for a period of time, then who are you left with?
Well, hopefully I'd be playing Hanlon rather than fucking Triantis. Would have brought on Hanlon anyway. Like, even though, I mean, Hanlon's got
but it's still not ideal. You've not.
But that could have been solved. That could have been solved.
That's structural. That's a club thing. I mean, yeah, Triantis is very much going to be Montgomery's man. Played with him Australia and stuff like that. But the club, you talk about Jack Ross, and that to me was new owners like reacting rashly. Now, some of the fans were against Ross, and you could understand it. They weren't the best, but he'd proved it at Hibs. He finished third before. He's a good manager. He's been a good manager at this level before, and it's very much my opinion that most of the time when you make a managerial appointment, you make a bad one, and when you finally get a good manager, you do everything to hold them.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a good manager. Now, whether he was doing well at Hibs or not, but a name to throw out for you then as the next manager, given Central Coast Mariners are probably going to win the league again. Mark Jackson is now their manager, an Englishman, 46 years old. His last job was getting sacked from MK Dons after getting them relegated to League Two. So that's the pool you were fishing in the last time of winning the league with Central Coast Mariners. So maybe he's the next man.
I was excited about bringing Montgomery. I like the idea of bringing someone in who is on an upward trajectory. It's quite a rare sort of thing to do. So I don't want to rewrite history and pretend that I wasn't sort of wooed by that and didn't want it to have it in, but it's not working. And even if by some miracle we do make the top six, and even if we were to make Europe, it's despite Montgomery, and he's got so much luck to get there. We've had so many sort of in good positions where we've cost it due to his substitutions. That's been a constant sort of theme since he came. Even when we won a game, I mean, we go back to his early games when we beat St Mirren, his substitutions we went 2-0 to 2-2 almost instantly. And that's like in the opening thing. There's been so many red flags about his struggles to manage in-game management, his decision making, his substitutions. It doesn't work. He doesn't get anyone up for it. The fans aren't on his side anymore. I think it's inevitable that he's going to have to go. I should talk about St Johnstone briefly.
Yes, St Johnstone.
So St Johnstone, they went with 3 at the back, as far as I could see. Well, 5 at the back, you know what it's like. And they had the Considine, Robinson, McGowan. That Kjelčen's out to the right. Yep. Not much of a player, him. He's his like, the way he takes care of the ball, not very good. And then they had Gallagher, then Phillips, and then it was sort of like a 5-3-1-1 with Sidibe up front. And I think the obvious ones I was wanting to check, so I didn't just go into St Johnstone talking about it being like a smash and grab. But I looked at all their forums, and they were screaming blue murder till the goals were going in about how shite St Johnstone were and how they weren't impacting the game. Levine knew exactly what he was doing. He dropped all these creative players and the guys that don't do the running for him, and just went with as solid a team as he could get. And he's not stupid, Levine. He knows exactly how to get a result at Easter Road, and he pulled out the bag. But Sidibe up front, man, he just kept on coming for more, and he was getting no change at times, no support. But fair play to him, he just would not stop. He was giving Rocky a hard time. Rocky was clearly like pissed off for having him around. And the minute he got his one chance, he was lethal, and he took it. Dan Phillips in the midfield, I feel like he had to do a lot of work in there. He didn't have a lot. Wee Max was just not getting involved.
He's not a Premiership footballer. Tony, that's it. He's not a Premiership footballer.
So Phillips did
He's
a lot
an idea.
of power of work in there. and they, as I said, they've scored for 2 shots on target. I don't think I'm being rude with that. They came with the game plan to frustrate. They done it. Hibs made a few other chances. Melida went up front. I wasn't against that when he put Melida up front. Melida had a few chances when he moved into that striker role. Melida still had a good game again. He's so fun to watch. He's such a fucking good player. But Marcondes was pish. He gave the ball away all the time. Marcondes has flattered to deceive, in my opinion. I'm not going to sit here and say he's rubbish. He's not rubbish. You can see the talent from a mile away. But in terms of what we're wanting and what you expect from him, especially now when he's got the games under his belt to have properly got over the injury problems, it's really not there. But yeah, as we're going to talk about Olasanya in a minute with Sidibe, these young sort of like whip it, pain in the arse strikers are really starting to come good and are causing so much bother.
I looked at the. So I've seen the St Johnstone score, then looked at the stats before watching the highlights, and everything you said was very much matches up with what you saw from the stats, and that they passed the ball in the box 4 times in 90 minutes. And they didn't have a shot between their first goal in the 49th minute and second goal in the 81st minute. So yeah, it's what St Johnstone have been this season, is that they're not a threat. They're not going to dominate games. They're not going to create many chances, but they're going to dig in and be hard to beat and do enough to survive. I think that's it. And then the fact that they had Meatoff respond to last week's bit disaster against Dundee by having a pretty good game with some key saves, massive for them. But they're a team.
Gave away a penalty. Should have gave away a penalty in the first half on Marcondes.
Oh, Marcondes.
Yeah. It's a stonewaller. Considering all the penalties that have been given this weekend, that was an absolute stonewaller. Aberdeen fans will probably be saying, well, Tony, what about the one when Marshall came out on Miovski, but he got a bit of the ball? That's what I thought.
The difference is, like, Marshall comes through the ball, and to me, that's if a player made that challenge with a header that Marshall made, I think people wouldn't really ask for a foul. With that one, I think his saving grace was it was soft. It wasn't a physically aggressive challenge, but he does continue into him and knock him down. I thought it would have been a penalty. So yeah, it was. I mean, Hibs would have probably thrown the game away anyway.
No doubt. So I fair play. I feel shit, and I was taking some shit on Twitter because obviously I'm very vocal about how shit St Johnstone are to watch.
They are. You're not lying. They're rubbish to watch, Tony.
And then they done a number, and as I said, fair play to Levine. Picked a team that a lot of their fans wouldn't have liked, and it was as mundane a team as he could possibly put out there, but it done the job. They got there with all the defenders and packing it out. So, and then they took that. They were lethal when they had the chances. But let's go to St Mirren Park, where I have a question for you lads, and I have forgotten what it is, so I'm just going to get it up. It's something about Lawrence Shankland. Nobody really cares. Hearts winning away without Shankland is Joe Sked.
Ugly. But
Craig Anderson.
Not surprising given who they were playing.
Joe, ugly. Talk to me.
Yeah, in a good way. Very much in a good way, that we've seen a lot this season of Hearts, especially more to this more at the start of the campaign, where we had some really poor results, and performances where we dominated the ball but didn't really do much with it, and there was a lot of kind of sterile possession, and it was a team that was still kind of getting used to what was being asked of them. This time around, not only without Shankland, but we're missing Benny, who is, I would arguably say, the most important midfielder, and Callum Muirhoff has been probably our best player this year. So all 3 of them out, and picked and then you add in the conditions and the way that St Mirren play, and I was curious to see how Hearts were going to play, switch to back 3, and it was very much a team that was designed to battle against what St Mirren were going to kind of throw at us, and it was a completely. It was almost like a role reversal. St Mirren had nearly 60% of the ball, and St Mirren are not a team that you want to have. Like, I don't think St Mirren are a team that want to dominate the ball. Robinson spoke about it afterwards. He was saying about some fans were kind of like moaning that they wanted to get the ball forward quicker, and he goes basically saying, "Oh, that's not the way we want to play here." But I'm also not sure having 60% of the ball is how they want to play. And what Hearts did was they were battled in midfield and had three centre-backs who had a really good game, especially Frankie Kent, who just headed everything, made sure that didn't really give up much, and created probably the better off the openings over the 90 minutes. So yeah, it was, you notice Shankland's absence, not so much the goal threat, but just the way he links play. He drops in, and I think he makes Hearts better to watch when he's in there, because he can kind of combines and joins up the midfield with the attack. There wasn't any of that. Both Forrest and Vargas, who played up front, they just want to run in behind, and they're going to work their arse off. So there wasn't really that. It
works so well if Shankland's dropping off, Vargas especially.
Yeah,
enjoy that. That works so well as a sort of partnership. They really complement each other. I see Cammy Devlin was in for a game. I know he's not played a lot in recent times. Do you think that was very deliberate because of the team that you were playing for this exact situation?
Yeah, with the injuries we had, I think it was necessity, and the way that we played in that, we just had to be resilient and kind of win the battle first, and then worry about what happened after. It was a perfect game for him. He was brilliant. He was just charging about. He's again, he's not someone you want to have on the ball too much. He passes fine, but it's not the type of passes you want. Well, Naismith wants from his midfielder. Without the ball, he's just a pain in the arse, and it's brilliant.
Craig Anderson. So I hate to do this, but the penalties, the decisions. You want to talk to me about them?
Not. I wasn't a fan of the penalty that Hearts got. I think I would include the Dundee penalty, the Motherwell penalty against Dundee. I think if there's a definition of the handball law where either of those is penalties, and I think the law's wrong. Again, like, Fraser is sliding to try and block a cross, and his hand has to be somewhere. You're not going to slide with your hand like pinned to your side. So to me, it's simply not a penalty. And I think St Mirren are a wee bit unlucky, but I think they've tied themselves in knots with these handball penalties in general. Like the Goldson one in the Old Firm game, to me, is a penalty because his arm is in a weird position. Yeah. It's like poking out. But Fraser's sliding to try and block a ball, and it comes off it. It's like he's not tried to do that. Like he's trying to make an honest.
I've not watched the Hearts highlights back, so I've not seen the penalty instance back.
Yeah, huge Arsene Wenger vibes here. I've not seen it. Big Hearts man here.
But from where I was sitting, it was a stone waller. No, and just the fact that you brought in the Shaughnessy one, because I didn't think the Shaughnessy one was a nonsense. He's got his arms down by his side, and the players are barely, I don't know, like a foot between them. And it is a nonsense. But it goes back to, I was at the VAR meeting before the start of the season, or just at the start of the season.
That must have been.
Yeah, it was. It was interesting. But what they said was, anyone like that where the arm, as long as it's not in a daft position, but it's down by your side, they're not going to give a penalty against it. But as soon as your arm is outstretched and above shoulder height, or shoulder height or above, it's going to be a penalty. So like the goal someone, when I saw it, it's like, yes, that's a penalty. But they seem to have just reneged on it and just basically said any time an arm or hand is in a position it's not beside its side,
these are not being given in Europe or England to the same frequency. It feels quite specific.
So many penalties here, so many. And I hear other I think I've heard other people, like Dermot Gallagher, when he does that shit on the Sky, he mentions he talks about Scottish football differently from the rest. That, like exactly what you just said there. Exactly what you just said.
It doesn't sit well with me at all. The McMenamin one, I thought the ref got it right, and I thought he was brave to stand by what I think what John Beaton should have done as well.
Yep.
He was looking for the penalty, and is there contact? Yes, there is, but he's the one who
initiated it.
He initiates it. He's on his way down. I thought that was a good decision to make. But when I was giving my answer about Hearts winning, it not being a surprise who they're playing, it's 3 years in a row St Mirren have put themselves in this fantastic position start of the season and then fallen away towards the split. Like St Mirren went into the game at Rugby Park a point ahead of Killie, and then in the space of 3 weeks they've fallen 5 points behind, despite Killie kind of on paper having a harder run of games. They obviously they threw away that in the most for me very funny fashion at Rugby Park at half time, because if you look at half time at Rugby Park, they were about to go 4 points clear, and they have taken 1 point from 3 games now. St Mirren, they started the season obviously like a house on fire, they had a bad run, pulled it back, and then it feels like a repeat of last season where they're like falling backwards over the line into the top 6, and it must be a wee bit, it's kind of what I talked about with Dundee earlier on, in isolation. St Mirren being in contention for Europe, being in the top 6 for the second consecutive year, it should be a kind of golden era for the club, and it kind of is, but there's going to be these missed opportunities because they should be much closer in terms of fighting out for 4th. They've still got a chance, but it feels to me like they consistently, when it gets to the crunch in these types of games, they just don't have it, because there's something that they're playing against a team who are very similar to them in their style. I think when they play Hearts, it's like both teams want, as you said, Joe, want to probably not have most of the ball.
No, Hearts want to have the ball. Like but it was, I think, just with the different conditions in terms of players who are missing, the team are playing, the actual the weather conditions. I think there was a wee bit of just acceptance. So right, we just need to battle for it.
Do you not think this Hearts team thrive on defending a lead, because they love it? They love chucking bodies. They love defending as well. I would say my experience of them.
I think this Hearts team are much. I think they like a bit more control, just because if you looked at the team yesterday, they did really well, but it's not a big team. Like the midfield, very small. It's like the 3 centre backs, and out of the 3 centre backs who started, 2 of them, only really 2 of them want to head the ball, and then when the team that finished, only Frankie Kent is good. I would say really good in there. He flanked by Rowles and Sibic. So that's why I was really pleased with the result, is because there's elements of the team, and I think Alex Cochrane used it, and Stephen Naismith alluded to it, that can chuck away over the last couple of seasons, chuck away soft points, whereas that was kind of like a statement that they can do that side of things. They're a bit more resilient. So I think that obviously helped against St Mirren, and the fact that St Mirren really didn't know what to do with having more possession, and I wonder if that's something that they're going to try and do under Robinson, is try and evolve the way that I was going to say the way that Livi have tried at times, but I never really felt in that St Mirren were ever going to turn it around or get a result. And I don't know, when you said about St Mirren should be a lot higher, I actually think, I look at their squad and I've watched them a few times, and I think they've done really well to be 5th place this season.
Just in terms of, they were 3 weeks ago a point ahead of Killie and 2-0 up against them at half time. From that point of view, they shouldn't be sitting right now. Yes, over the season, I agree with you.
They should be sitting here right now, where the only reason that they're in that position is because the other 2 have absolutely shit the bed behind them. Because it should be going into next week where St Mirren are actually in real danger of not making the top 6 because they're playing Celtic. That should be what's happening.
But I agree with you, over the season, that I think they've been riding a very good start, and they are where they deserve to be on performances, exactly where they are at the moment in position wise. But I think just get that fact that, as I say, you're looking at 3 weeks ago, 2-0 up at half time, about to go 4 points clear in 4th place, to now be sitting 5 points behind will be disappointing for them.
Well, now that you're being critical of St Mirren, Craig, I would like you to be nice. I'd like you to say something nice about a much maligned Kilmarnock player who is much maligned by this podcast in its pretty much its entirety.
Yeah, Mr. Liam Donnelly. I have certainly been critical of him. And the problem I've always had with Donnelly is we brought him in last season when we got promoted on a 1-year deal, and you kind of thought, well, it makes a wee bit of sense. There's a guy that's had a bit of experience playing at this level. He was joining a squad where the quality wasn't always there. There was a lot of guys kind of coming up from the Championship. We brought in Alan Power for the same reason, brought him back, and it's just like we just want to get guys on the park who can kind of get things over the line. But he was injured so often, and then when he played, he was chucking goals away and he was giving the ball away frequently. And then he left the club, or it was kind of announced that he'd been made an offer, but nothing ever came of it at the end of the season. And all of a sudden, in the middle of, like, after the League Cup games had started, halfway through the League Cup campaign, it was like, oh yeah, Liam Donnelly's been, he's coming back for a 1-year deal again. And you're like, it felt really regressive. It felt like it wasn't the player we needed. And then he had again spent much of the season injured. Brad Lyons had been superb first half of the season, a player who's just got a new contract. But then Lyons got that injury just before the winter break, and you were looking at it and you were thinking, we cannot be relying on Donnelly to get us through at the end of the season here. We need to go out and sign a defensive midfielder in January to make sure that we can do this. And we didn't. And you're starting to really worry. And Donnelly, when he came into the team at first, was shaky, was kind of questionable in terms of how he was, using the ball again. He's physically, he's always going to be good, but he's just a very odd player in general. But over the last few weeks, him and Polworth have built up a superb partnership. Now, obviously, the pair of them played together.
Another maligned player, maligned player.
Yeah. But at least with Polworth, I feel you could always see what he was good at. Like Polworth is, if Polworth had any pace or any ability to tackle, then he'd probably have played for Scotland. Like, his footballing ability, his passing ability, his calmness in possession is fantastic, but he lacks a lot of other things. But with Donnelly, you were always like, well, you're quite good with dead balls, like kicking them as well, and he's obviously great in the air, and his tackling's pretty good, but his passing in general play and his positional play and his decision making has always been really bad. But what he's had recently has been a run of games, and a run of games where he's kept himself fit as well, and he's really started to grow. And it maybe does help that pairing of him and Polworth played together before and took Motherwell to third place. So it's not like as much as we can malign the league, you have to be at least half decent to be able to do that, to be able to run a midfield that's playing at that level. But in the last few games, he's taken on a much more leadership of that midfield. He's been physically imposing. He's been winning the ball. He's been winning the ball back. He's been keeping it, passing it, being calm under pressure, and been really strong in the air. And Killie obviously already got 4 centre halves on the pitch, quite a lot in terms of having 2 in the full-back position, certainly at times. But he's also been able to drop in to be an extra centre half when it's been needed. So he's really added a lot of solidity, and it feels like one of those like I don't want to say Patrick Vieira because that's obviously a massive stretch, but it's like that type of influence, that type of player in the midfield where he's like physically so ahead of people that he's kind of just barging opponents off the ball in that way. And it's been a major transformation for him, and I still don't know whether he will be kept on going into next season because, as I said, Brad Lyons has been given the contract to 2026. He's surely going to be looking at that as one of the areas of the park he can upgrade a little bit. But I think it's a credit to him that he has stuck with it. It's a credit to McInnes that he stuck with him, and I think it shows again McInnes as a coach has been so good at getting the best out of players and making players better and making players improve and making players believe they should be part of a squad. And we've been seeing that over and over again. And yeah, I think talking more widely about the game, he was one of Killie's better players. It wasn't a good game. It was the wind, very wind affected, very attritional. Ross County played all 3 of their strikers. They played Brophy, White and Murray.
We see that every so often. This has been sprung up and it's had varying degrees of success.
To me, it didn't work. They were all very well marshalled by
in the 10.
Yeah, well, White was obviously in there, but Finlay and Mayo and we had Finlay, Mayo, Dees and Wright all playing in that game. They that's what they want. They want people to just be running at them and playing high balls. Murray had nothing in the game. I didn't think Ross County were very good, but nor were they very bad. It was just a game where it was quite hard to judge because they very much tried to play the conditions. They'd missed out the midfield. They were getting the ball wide. They were getting the ball into the box. They were getting the ball long. Killie dealt with that. Killie didn't create loads on their own, but we did have more of the chances in the game, I would have to say. And I think obviously the goal itself is... Vassell said himself, it's actually a bad touch from him that makes his body position really awkward to shoot, but he gets a lot of power behind it, and then it's a mistake by Wickens. It goes right through his body.
Another one.
And I think, it shows him. I think people were talking about him because he made lots of saves in that game, and I think Wickens the way he carries himself, you can see that he probably is a good goalkeeper, and he's probably going to be a good goalkeeper. But he's making a lot of mistakes, and it's a lot to chuck a guy like that into relegation battles.
Really good of Ross County to take these young goalkeepers on and give them the space to make the mistakes while they put their sort of really experienced guys who they helped do exactly that. They helped him. They helped their other goalie go through all the bad times, get better, become a safe pair of hands, and now discard them when they got to that point for a guy going through the same situation as their current sub-goalkeeper. It's absolutely bananas.
There's really not a lot much else to say about the game, to be honest. I think it was a really big win for Killie, especially literally all the other three teams that are behind us in the table lost.
I seen you mention... sorry to interrupt. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's in terms of the result, massive for both. Just with obviously St Johnstone winning and County losing ground in the battle to get away from the 11th spot. But Killie, I think that takes a massive step towards securing fourth. Because like we were talking off air, Craig, St Mirren have got 3 games against Old Firm, and just what they are at the moment, I just can't see them making up that ground. A really, really good position and comfortable position and to be in to almost enjoy the remainder of the season.
I won't be enjoying
I know.
it.
That's
not unless it gets wrapped up sooner than I think it will. I still think it'll go the last 2 games. Yeah.
But I just wanted to ask you before about Kyle Vassell, because I saw you tweet about him yesterday. He's another one, Tony, where I'm thinking I would like him at Hearts. I honestly just because, again, sorry for going back to the Hearts game, but with Shankland missing yesterday, he would have been the perfect striker to come into that situation. And not just as a squad player, but just as a good first team player. But he does seem to get criticism from Killie fans. It's just one of those where people just don't appreciate what he's got, and it's only until he's injured or leaves until you go, you know what, he's actually pretty good.
I think for me it was like he goes on massive runs without scoring goals, and I think that
he brings you more than goals, doesn't he?
Oh no, of course he does, but a lot of people don't want to see that, right? They're like looking at a striker that scored 2 in 17 or whatever it was at one spell.
They all just want Van Veen on, don't they?
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Well, that's it as well. He's brought in these 2 forwards that we obviously know are goal scorers and are different players, and I think it's been a credit to him and Watkins because that partnership they've built up, they're telepathic at times. You saw the goal with Tynecastle, the 1-2s, and there was a lot of that kind of stuff yesterday. That Van Veen and Stewart have been stuck on the bench, and the 2 of them have had their own fitness issues. But Vassell's also carrying I think a hernia injury that he's been carrying for most of the season. That McInnes has basically said if we can get something wrapped up, then we'll be sending him for that straight away. Because as it stands, Killie might have European games in July to look forward to.
This is absolutely brilliant that Van Veen, even though Vassell's carrying injury, I mean Van Veen must be unfit as fuck.
He looks it. He looks it. To be fair, he's been good when he's came on. His touches and all the rest of it. We didn't even go in the park yesterday, and so I think there's a lot of people. The guy behind me was giving him pelters from basically the start of the game. Even though I thought Kyle Vassell was immense in the second half of yesterday's game in terms of how he held up the ball. Even after he scored, there was a guy saying, we need to get him off and all of this stuff. But the same guy was also saying, like with the team, it's the same shite we've had all season. And it's like, well yeah, we're currently about to go 5 points clear in fourth. I think actually keeping the same guys that have done that might be
a good idea.
Very wise. But I think a lot of people have just go to the football to moan. But Vassell's had a lot of stick, and I wasn't sure of him when he came in at first, but of late, basically since about this time last year, last game before the split against St Mirren, superb. All the post-split games was fantastic. He seems to be a player who thrives on the bigger games. and that's what you want, to be quite honest. And yeah, he's been fantastic, and he's a leader. You can see why he's a captain. This team is very vocal. This Killie team tear strips off each other on the park regularly. Like, you can see it. It's what McInnes wants. He wants leaders all over the park. He's got it now, and he's a big part of that. And I don't think we've always had good strikers, and I think he kind of very much kind of follows on that kind of path of good Killie forwards that we've always been quite lucky to have.
Lads, we've done an hour and 18 minutes. I'm tired. You're tired. We can get pod fatigue. But we do have one more game, and let's give it what it deserves. If someone can give me something interesting about Livingston and Aberdeen, please go ahead now, or forever hold your peace.
Just finish the season for both of those clubs. Much as you think, just get this season over and done. Well, I know Aberdeen have got a cup semi-final to look forward to, but Jesus.
I was laughing when that Aberdeen goal went in. The obviously subsequently got decided. Like, Killie game had just finished, and I got a buzz on my phone saying 1-0 Aberdeen. And I was walking out the ground, and I was looking at a table. I'm like, Aberdeen could still finish top 6 next week. When they were about to go 1-0 up. Now they needed to have beaten. They needed a wee bit of a goal difference swing on Dundee, but Dundee were playing Rangers, so it's not impossible. And then they played Dundee, and then obviously even that little glimmer of what would have obviously been fully undeserved hope was completely extinguished by a very strangely discussed VAR call, I would say. It's surely offside. Like I've not seen. They didn't show the lines. But it's clearly McDonald who's been given offside from the initial ball. But I found it odd for Neil McCann to be like, oh well, the assistant's looking along the line and he's not giving it. It's like, have you ever tried to be on the line looking along from a dead ball at the guy at the very far side when you've got like 15 bodies in between you? It is a very difficult decision to make. You've got to trust that the VAR decision. I often question VAR decisions when it's like a moving ball and there's players running in opposite directions. But in this case, because you've got to pick a frame and stuff like that. This is a dead ball and everyone's moving the same way. I'm pretty sure they're going to have got it right. But it's weird that why aren't sports scene getting the image, the lines, which they must have been given by the SFA or whoever, and it just to me.
It's because they found out after it that they've not seen it till after they've done it. And then they're like, oh, don't put that frame in, actually. We don't want anyone to see.
And Paul Mitchell's like going on commentary talking about Miovski being offside for the first ball, and it's like, that's not relevant. He was saying it himself. It just didn't make any sense to me, but I think it says it all that's kind of what we're talking about at this point, because the game, like Livingston, they incredibly are not like they are going to go down, they are going to finish bottom, but you're still looking at that table and being like, do you know what? Like, if they could win 4 games, which given they're playing the bottom 6, it's not impossible to do. They won't do it, but you're like, how are they not already relegated at this point? Because I feel like they've not won any games ever that I can remember. I think they beat Motherwell at home maybe 2 months ago, and I literally can't remember another win.
They won 1-0 recently, didn't they? Against St Mirren.
Oh yeah, that's right. But yeah, it feels that may be the game I was thinking of though. It feels like they've just not won any games like all season, which is why they've got 18 points. But it feels like if you've not won any games, I'm scrolling through the league games, and I've got that win against St Mirren in February.
Then it was like 2 months before that as well.
Then I'm scrolling back and they beat Motherwell 2-0 in the 7th of October. That was their second last win. The 7th of October is 6 months ago now, exactly 6 months ago to today. So they've won 1 league match in 6 months, and yet they're not relegated yet. Because they play Ross County after the split. If they were to win that somehow, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to happen. They
should have beat them the last game. They should have beat them the last game as well, Livingston.
So Livingston are away. Aberdeen will be, as you said, just be glad to get the season over and done with. They have been ranked all season across 3 different managers. I mean, that's unfair on leaving, but you know what I mean. And they just need to, I don't understand if they stopped the Warnock experiment. What have they been doing? It doesn't really feel like they're any closer to actually appointing someone. And I think it would be a situation where it would be too bad to get someone in for the post-split games like they did with McInnes all those years ago, and like they've done with other guys.
They've just been making the spurious claims all the time that are based on nothing that they actually know. It feels like they just say things that they think sound good, without even if they're not completely like that's been an issue with them all season from their ticket fiascos to now. And let's put this to rest. Thank you very much for joining me and spending so much time going through what ended up being a bloody entertaining weekend in the Scottish top flight, despite those last 2 games we were forced to talk about. But lads, Joel, thanks very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Oh, anytime. And Craig, same to yourself. Thanks very much. Hope you both have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, which I'm recording this, and I'm assuming this will go out pretty early doors tomorrow once Fowler's had a little finger through it all. But thanks very much for joining us. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.